Hi, this is Sepha Kirshblum. It is Sunday night, January 26th at 8 o'clock, and this is our fourth in the series of King David's Diaries. So we're going to do a quick recap from last week. Hold on, I'm just going to make it perfect. We spoke last week of the story of Dovid and Goliath. How Dovid, this Hakatan, this little one, right, the youngest of Yishai's sons, who wasn't even drafted into the war, right, when he came to check on his brothers, heard what Goliath, this giant, was saying, and inherently from his perspective translated it as, if he is doubting the strength of the Jewish army, that means he's doubting the strength of God, and therefore he is mocking our God, thinking he could possibly beat him. And therefore, after hearing all the rewards that he could possibly get from the king, he said, it is God who will be with me, right? When trying to convince Shaul to let him do it, when Shaul didn't even want him to go down to fight Goliath, he said pretty much what we constantly need to hear ourselves, that it's the idea that we are not fighting a war, that it is not our strength, it is all up to God. And if God is going to fight this war, and if God wants me to win, I'll win. And he goes and he takes 5 little rocks and a slingshot and ultimately kills the giant of Goliath. The Plishtim run for their lives in fear. The Jews are able to take over and conquer a tremendous area of land, right? And we ended that scene and that story with Shaul watching him, looking at Avner, his Sar Tzava, right, his main officer general, and saying, who is that kid? Right? And we said, of course he knows who he is. Number one, he's the one that sent him off to go fight, right? At first he put him in the army armor, but David couldn't walk. And at first he said, no, you're a Nar, you can't go, right? He knows exactly who David is. David has played music for him in the palace before. He knows who he is. So what does it mean? Who is that kid, right? It's the idea of, oh my gosh, I did not see that guy coming, right? I did not realize who he was underneath. And it's the original almost foreshadow to say, starting to connect the dots, right? Shaul is noticing that God is so clearly with David, and there's something incredibly, understandably threatening, right, about that element. And that is how Perek Yud Zayin ended. And we opened up last week, Perek Yud Chet. So we're going to quickly recap what we did there as well, right? So here we have Perek Yud Chet, Pasuk Aleph, Vayehi kechaloto ledaber al Shaul, v'nefesh Yehonatan nikshira b'nefesh David, right? And it was after the scene of David and Goliath, Yonatan's soul was intertwined with David's soul, right? And in our shiur last week, we compared that pasuk to the pasuk of the connection that Yaakov felt to Binyamin, right? This concept of such a devoted love, specifically of unconditional love, right, which the Mishnah highlights here. It's ahava she'eno tuluya badavar, right? It's this love that is not dependent on anything else. Therefore, we say the unconditional love is usually represented parent to child, right? And Yonatan is more of a contemporary to David. What does it mean, parent to child? It's that idea when the parent wants the success for their child, no matter what, right? They want their child to outshine them. That's the significance. That's the main objective, right? So here it's letting us know that Yonatan loves David in this unconditional way, that his soul's intertwined with him from the perspective of, I want David to succeed and outshine me, right? Vayavehu Yonatan kenafsho, and Yonatan loved him like his own soul, right? Vayikachehu Shaul bayom ho v'lo natano l'shav beit aviv. At this point, Shaul makes David stay in the house, right? And this pasuk always makes me think, we didn't mention this last week, it's going to be more of the theme of tonight's shiur, but of the idea of keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer, right? Shaul wants David in the palace full time because he's so threatened by him, right? I need to keep tabs on him. I need to know where he is, when he is, what he's doing. I want to know every detail. And therefore, he wants him to stay permanently in the palace. Pasuk Gimel, Vayichrot Yonatan David Brit Ba'avato Tog Nafsho, and Yonatan makes a covenant with David because of this intense love. What is this covenant? Pasuk Dalid, Vayitpashit Yonatan et HaMe'il, Asher Alav, Vayitnehu LeDavid Umadav Va'ad Charbov Ad Kashto Va'ad Chagoro. He gives him his Me'il, right, his cloak, and his armor, right? And I mentioned last week, but I'm going to bring you a text proof here of the idea that the me'il, the word specifically me'il of this coat, has a representation of the melucha, right? Back from our first shiur that we did on this topic in Perek Vav, after Shmuel doesn't get rid of Amalek, what happens, right? When Shaul doesn't get rid of Amalek, Shmuel comes to him and tells him he's losing the melucha, right? They have a whole discussion, and it ends with Pasuk Chavzayin, Vayisov Shmuel alachet. Shmuel turns to leave, Vayichazik biknaf mi'ilo, Vayikara, right? And Shaul grabs Shmuel's cloak and it tears. And when it tears, Vayomer Elav Shmuel, Shmuel then says to him, Kara Hashem et mamlechot Yisrael me'alacha. Right, Hayom, sorry. Right, Hashem is going to tear the melucha away from your hands, so to speak, today. Unitana l'reacha hatov mimeka, and he's going to give it to a friend, right? And now we've finally met that friend who is better than you, right? And that concept of the me'il is the symbolism of the melucha, of the kingdom, right? So what is Yonatan saying to David when he gives him the me'il? Right? Yonatan is saying, I get it, right? I know that I'm the prince, and I know that in all other nationalities, there's a dynasty. There's a concept that the next king is the prince, is the son of the king. But after watching what happened with you and Goliath, and after getting to know you, David, it's not me, right? I believe God is showing us who he has chosen, and I believe it's you. And what Yonatan is doing here in Pasuk Dalid, Vayitpashet Yonatan et HaMe'il Asher Alav, right? It should have been mine. This Me'il should have been me, but I'm taking it off and I'm giving it to you to express, I'm okay with this. I believe this is the plan. I believe this is what is supposed to happen. And therefore, even though it should be me, and even if I would want it, I want it for you more, because I think that's how it's supposed to unfold, right? So this is a major statement of Yonatan. Obviously, it's through subtext. It will be very clear in the text as the prakim unfolds, but here it's in this totally covered up way of him saying, David, I think it's going to be you. Right? Hence, it's Vaichrot Brit. They have to create this covenant. But it's such a big deal because it's so not expected. But it will become very explicit in the upcoming prakim. But I just wanted to close with that. And now we go back into the perek. This is now new. I mean, obviously, some of the things we just spoke about were a little bit new, but now we're going into text we have not yet seen. So this is now back in perek Yud Chet, right? But now I'm jumping back to Pasuk Hey. Okay. Vayetze David b'chol asher yishachanu Shaul yaskil. David goes out wherever Shaul sends him, and he's successful. Vayisimeu Shaul al anshe milchama, right? And he rises up in the ranks, right? Shaul keeps putting him higher and higher in terms of the ranks of the officers, and he's in charge of anshe milchama, right? He now has a lot of people under him. Vayitav be'inei kol ha'am, right? As this is happening, the people love this. They think this is a great idea. V'gam be'inei avdei Shaul. Even his servants think this is a great idea. Really inferring that David was this pipsqueak, gingy nobody, that if you even knew, you saw him from the perspective of the youngest of that family, the little brother, right? Or the one that doesn't look like a typical Israeli chayal, or the one that wasn't drafted, or the musician, right? He had so many different ways people knew him, but now he is an ish milchama, right? After he killed Goliath, right? All of a sudden it's like, oh, who was that guy? Oh, we should put him in charge in the army. Oh, amazing. And he's actually really good at it. Oh, and every time he's given more positions of power, it just keeps getting better and better. So everyone is loving this idea, right? That's what Pasuk K is highlighting, right? As he gets more and more successful, everyone's cool with this, right? It doesn't matter that he's little, and it doesn't matter that he's the underdog, and it doesn't matter that no one knew him before. He's awesome, right? Pasuk Vav, Vayihi bevo'am b'shuv David mehakot et haplishti, right? And it was after David killed the Plishti, vatitzena hanashim mikol arei Yisrael lashir v'hamcholot, right? And the more you study Navi in general, you see this is pretty much the norm, right? After a major war, there were parades of excitement when the Jews would come back from the war, and they would sing praises to all of the main officers of the war, right? So when David came back, when that war with the Plishtim was over, the women came out for this parade and they would make up songs and dance, right? They would have their musical instruments and sing Likrat Shaul Hamelech B'tufim B'simcha Uv'shalishim, right? So this parade of music and singing was going on, right? With generally the main goal is to sing praise to the king. But what happens? Pasuk Zayin, Vata'anena Hanashim Hamisachakot Vatomarna, right? What the song was, it was like a repeat song, right? Like I always envision camp, or a color war when, the captain screams out one line and everyone responds, right? Like I scream one thing, you respond, and often just echo what I said, right? So Vatanena Hanashim, right? This echo of the song was going back and forth. And what were the words that they were chanting? Hika Shaul ba'alafav, David Birivotav, right? Shaul kills thousands and David kills tens of thousands, right? Now, in theory, just even if there was no animosity and there was no jealousy and there was no issue between Shaul and David, this is a little bit of a risky statement, right? For people to say this of their king and anybody else, it's a little bit pushing the wrong button, right? But they're thinking, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, Shaul, you're amazing, but look at this guy, this diamond in the rough that is coming out, right? So Shaul, you're amazing and you kill thousands. And look at this guy, we got David who kills tens of thousands. But this is pushing a button, understandably, right? Pasuk Chat Vayichar l'Shaul me'od, right? Shaul is super angry. Right? This is terrible in his eyes. Vayomer, and explicitly he says, Natnu David revavot, veli natnu halafim. Right? Are you kidding? They gave David the 10,000s and they only gave me the thousands. Ha'od lo acham, right? The only thing he doesn't have is the malucha, is the kingdom, right? In case we weren't sure if Shaul was connecting the dots, in case we weren't sure if Shaul was insecure that maybe David is the next king, here he's explicit and he's saying, oh my God. Right? Did everyone hear that? Like, did you guys hear that? That's insane, right? I only get thousands. He gets tens of thousands. That should be the king. So the only thing they didn't give him is my crown, is the kingdom, right? This is insane. Pasuk tet, Vayihi Shaul oyen et David mehayom hahu v'hala, right? Shaul now hates David from that day forward, right? And this concept of hate is a concept of feeling threatened, right? At this point, there's no going back. Right? Shaul is completely jealous and overwhelmed by David and will feel threatened by him, I guess is the best phrase, from that day forward. Pasuk Yud, Vayihimi Maharat, and it was on the next day, Vatitzlach Ruach Elokim Ra'ah El Shaul, right? This bad spirit of God came on Shaul, which makes complete sense, right? Especially if we're understanding this as some sort of mental illness that's rooted in an emotional issue here, right? So of course, right? Of course, after yesterday, when he had such an emotional outburst, he's going to be in a bad place today, right? Vayitnabe b'toch habayit, v'David menagin b'yado, ki yom b'yom, right? So he's having this episode, so to speak. And because he's in the house, David is playing for him, right? Because this is the system. When Shaul's in a bad place, they call David to play music. And as we saw in Perek Tetzayin, it often helped, right? It often was able to take away this bad spirit. But the worse Shaul's getting, the harder it's going to be for David to be successful to get him out of that funk, right? So David is playing like he always does. But this time, Hachanit biyad Shaul. Shaul is holding a spear. Now it was in vision. I cannot do it, so I'll show you in theory. Right, there are many people who are pen flippers. Right, I'm doing it super super slow, and it is not interesting to me or to you. Right, but there are people who it's almost like a stress ball, so to speak, right? They are able to flip the pen so quickly, so quickly, so quickly, right? Envision a fidget toy, right? So for Shaul, his fidget toy, so to speak, is a spear, right? A small spear, probably the size of this pen, right? So he's just playing with it in his hand as this is happening. Pasuk Yud Aleph, Vayatel Shaul et hachanit. Vayomer, right? He's playing with this spear, and all of a sudden he says to himself, okay, but David, Bakir. Wait, you know what? David's just over there against the other wall playing the musical instrument. I'm just gonna shoot it at David. And it'll be like I'm playing darts or something, right? People won't even realize what I'm doing, right? And literally, boom, he shoots it. But Vaisov David mipanav. David swerves out of the way, right? Vaisov, he turns, right? Literally turns around, flips himself. But this happens pa'amayim, twice, right? The first time it happens, I imagine everyone's just in shock, right? What did he just do? What just happened? Oh, what? Right? And so they bring the spear back to Shaul and they think, oh, wow, he must have just forgot where he was for a minute. But then he does it a second time. And I imagine after that second time, everyone disperses because something's off, right? I don't think people were putting full dots together yet at this point because don't forget, David is beloved. So it can't be that Shaul would want him dead, right? Because he's so helpful to Shaul and he wins wars for Shaul. It can't be. But that was weird, right? Twice he shot it at him. That was weird. And it was so good that David has such quick reflexes because he's supposed to be focusing on the music, but instead somehow he realized he should, swerve out of the way twice perfectly. Wow. Right? And the text continues. Pasuk Yud Bet, Vayira Shaul Mipnei David. Right? And it's so interesting. It almost makes you want to read it twice to make sure you read the subject, properly. Shaul was scared from before David, right? At least for me, the first time I read it, I was like, oh, I must have read that wrong. It should be Vayirat David mipnei Shaul, right? David was scared of being around Shaul. That's not what it says. Shaul was scared of David. Ki haya Hashem imo. Because it was so obvious. It was so in your face that God was with David. Umeim Shaul sar. And he had left Shaul. Right? So your heart has to break a little for Shaul here, right? Not only does he feel threatened by him, but he's now scared, right? Meaning everyone's reality is their truth. Shaul's truth is I should be scared of David because God is with him, meaning God told me I'm going to lose the kingdom, probably to you, which means logic says, from Shaul's perspective, how am I going to die? How am I going to lose the Malucha? David's going to kill me. David's going to kill me because God is so clearly with him. And God told me I'm going to lose the Malucha and it's going to go to someone else. So David probably knows he's going to be the next king, which means he thinks or was told or believes he should kill me to be able to get there, right? So Vayirash Shaul mipnei David. I just want us to understand this pasuk because it's so significant to the psukim that are going to unfold. In no way do I want to create an innocence for Shaul. The things he is going to do, many things that he'll do, are cruel and horrible and on the verge of crazy. But his reality is described in Pasuk Yud Bet. And Pasuk Yud Bet tells us he was scared of David because it was so clear that God is with David and he is not with Shaul anymore. And therefore, that fear is going to take him to a place where he literally is going to believe that David is going to try to kill him. Because if David is supposed to be the next king, then David would want to overthrow the king. And to overthrow the king, you have to kill the king. And therefore, David would want to kill him. But the world loves him, so that's complicated, right? Pasuk Yud Gimel, Vayisirehu Shaul me'imo, Vayisimehu lo sar aleph, Vayetze ve'avo lifnei ha'am. Right? So this next move that Shaul makes, right? Other times it's going to tell us his thought process and his rationale for the choices that he makes. Here it does not yet tell us his rationale, but the word choice is so powerful, right? Shaul removes him from him, right? Shaul removes David from Shaul's presence, right? Whether it's self-protective, right? Part of it, that's how I hear it, like to remove David from his presence. It's totally self-protective to say, it's so hard for me to be around you, right? It's so hard for me to see God with you and feel God's absence, right? That's so in my face, right? Lahavdil, but I don't even know if it's so intense that I even have to say lahavdil, right? If you're in a relationship with someone and they break up with you don't want to have to see them with someone else, right? Especially if it was not a mutual breakup, right? And what Shaul is feeling is God broke up with me. God left me. And that would be painful enough. But now I have to see Ki Haya Hashem Imo. I have to watch Hashem's new relationship with David. No, that's just too hard, right? And again, you just have to hurt for Shaul with him. He has to take David away from him because it hurts too much, right? I don't want to see God with you, right? When I see you, I see God with you, and that hurts too much. So just no, don't be here, right? Or maybe Shaul doesn't trust himself when David's around, right? Look what happens in Pasuk Yud Aleph. When David is around him too much, this Ruach Ra takes over so much and he tries to kill him, right? So Vayasireu Shaul me'imo. He removes David from in front of him. And what's the solution? Vayisimehu lo sar aleph. He puts him in the army in charge of 1,000, aka a super high-ranking officer. Vayatze vayavo lifnei ha'am, right? But inevitably, right? Whether Shaul did the math on that or not before, now that David has such a high position in the army, more and more people are getting to know David, right? Vayetze vayavo lifnei ha'am, right? He's the guy going and coming in front of the people, and now he's the face of the army to the people. Pasuk Yud Dalid, Vayihi David l'chol dirachav maskil, v'Hashem imo. Right? David is successful in everything he does. And it is so clear and obvious that God is with him, right? So everything that is making Shaul feel threatened is making everyone in the every person in the nation, love this guy more and more, right? Who wouldn't want their main army general to be someone who's successful at everything he does? And it's so clear that God's with him, right? That sounds ideal. That sounds like almost too good to be true, right? Hold on. Question: did Shaul want to put David in harm's way? Yes, but not meaning the text will be explicit when he does it from that perspective, which is why I think the phrasing in Pasuk Yud Gimel is so significant. In a few psukim, it's going to tell us that he purposely puts him in specific wars in hopes that he dies more, right? It'll be very clear in the text. But because it hasn't told us that yet, and the phrasing in Pasuk Yud Gimel is so weird, right? He removes David from him, right? I feel like his first objective wasn't that. I think he doesn't go that like methodical and yet. At this point, it's almost self-preservation, and then soon it will get to let's kill David, right? Like let's get rid of him in a simpler way, in harm's way, as you put it, which I think is so perfect, right? So first, the stage is self-preservation and just put him out there, but then it backfires from the perspective all that's happening is now the people are going to love him more and more, which is going to make it worse, which will then bring him to exactly your point, which the text will show us in a minute. So Hashem is with him, Pasuk Tedvav, and here's where things are going to start to change. Vayar Shaul, Asher hu maskil ma'od. Right? Shaul sees, oh my gosh, right? I just needed to remove him from being around me, right? I just needed him outside of the palace. But now this is worse, right? He just is more and more successful. Vayagar mi panav, right? He literally can't stand being around him, right? Hold on one second. Oh, you hear an echo. That's a good question. Oh, I think you have two things connected. There are a few people actually that I can see have two things connected. So just for people to be aware, if you're hearing an echo, you might have like a phone and a computer connected. That's possible. Oh, perfect. Okay, great. Sorry. Okay, so we go back into the text. Pasuk, Pasuk Tetzayin. V'kol Yisrael v'Yehuda ohev et David. Right? Everyone loves this guy, right? He literally, as we mentioned last week when we saw Yonatan loves him, to meet David is to love David, right? We saw it even with Shaul, even that first time we met him where they met in Perek Tetvav, the first pasuk, it told us he meets David, he loves him. And now as more of the Jewish people are meeting him, they love him more too. Right? He's the going and coming. He is the face of the war, right? And I think in today's times we can so appreciate it, that concept, right? Because it's a newscaster or certain people, from the media in general, they're the face of the war in some sense, right? There are people, when you see their face, it stirs emotions, and not necessarily bad emotions, sometimes amazing emotions, right? There are so many people that are coming to mind for the last year and a half, right? Of that face is like, oh, I want to hear what that person has to say because I think it's going to be helpful, or I think it's going to be, a really well thought out argument or a thought out idea, or now a big announcement is going to come, right? So here it's letting us know there may not have been social media or the internet or even a newspaper, but it's David's face that represents the success in war right now. So that is definitely endearing him to the Pasuk Yud Zayin. Vayomer Shaul el David. Shaul now says to David, right, here's his big plan. Hine biti hagdola meirav. Ah, my oldest daughter's name is Meirav. Ota etel lecha leisha. I would like you to marry her. Here's the clause. Ach, hayeli leben chayil v'hilachem l'chamot Hashem. Right? And he knows David well enough to know exactly what to say also, right? What does he say to David? You know what would be a good dowry to be able to marry my daughter Meirav, even though you and I are all thinking, didn't he earn her for Goliath, right? Seems to be everything he should have earned for beating Goliath fell by the wayside, right? None of that seems to surface ever. But here he brings up Meirav and he says, what would I like, for you to do to earn the rights to marry the princess? I need you to be a Ben Chayil, right? I need you to join the army completely, but not for me. Hashem, right? He's literally taking the words from David when he went to fight Goliath and say, it's not a war for me. It's not even the Jewish people war. It's a war for God, right? So altruistic it should be. Right, but here the text lets you know. But Shaul Amar, Shaul said to himself, right, and this is what I already forgot who asked. I'm so sorry. scroll up what Susie had mentioned a minute ago. So here's exactly your idea, right? What does he say? Well, Shalom Marla, like he's saying to himself, Al tihi adibo. I don't want to have to be the one that kills him. Utihibo yat plishtim, right? When it says I can't have my hand being the one that kills him, of course he can't have his hand killing him. The world loves David now, right? There's no more trying to do it yourself concept. No spear darts is going to work so simply anymore, right? Because now the people love him. So he says, you just need to fight a lot of wars for me and prove to me that you're not for me. You have to fight God's wars, and then you can earn the rights to marry the princess. It's a good chat. Vayomer David el Shaul. David hears this offer, and he responds to Shaul. He says, Mi anochi umi chayai mishpachat avi b'Yisrael ki chatan lamelech. Right? David is like, absolutely not. I'm a nobody. Right? I'm not from an important family. I'm not anyone significant. I cannot marry the princess. Right? But we assume that it's probably some sort of a negotiation, but he pretty much is saying, I'm not worthy, right? I cannot do this. And then the pasuk tells us, "Vayihi ba'et me'rav bat Shaul David." While this betrothal offer was made to David, he nitna la'Adriel hamecholati le'isha. She was given to Adriel to marry, right? So it's just like, wait, what? Right? So clearly the text is letting us know that Shaul, really, this was just words, right? He was only saying this because he wanted David to commit. He wanted David to go fight those wars with the expectation that he would never come home. So he was never going to marry Merav anyway. So who cared, right? So he let her marry someone else in the interim. And then the story gets more interesting, right? Pasuk Chaf, Tehav Michal bat Shaul at David. The younger sister, Michal, was actually in love with David. Vayagidu l'Shaul, right? And someone, or many someones, Vayagidu, people tell Shaul about this. Vayishar hadavar be'inav. And all of a sudden, this is very good in his eyes. It's like, oh, okay, I let Meirav marry someone else, but I can continue on this plan because my other daughter wants to marry him. Okay, great, let's continue on this plan, right? And again, I know this is a class on David, but just like anyone who was with us that we learned Megillat Esther together, and we compared Esther to Shaul, right? That idea of what we call intertextuality, that the text is often in dialogue with itself. So don't worry, I'm not going to totally veer off path, but just to put the idea into your head because it's so amazing when you follow it, right? What other story in Tanakh has a father who offers one daughter, but then they marry the other daughter, right? It should ring a bell of some father who manipulates the future son-in-law with negotiations over his many daughters, so to speak, right? This is most definitely allusion to Yaakov with Rachel and Leah, right? And the story will also be so similar, right? When Lavan first met Yaakov, he loved him, right? Then Yaakov makes him so rich, but ultimately, how does Lavan treat Yaakov? He wants to kill him, right? Which is exactly what's happening with Shaul. When he first meets him, he loves him, right? And he helps him be so successful. But then as things unfold, things go awry, right? And ultimately, Shaul wants to kill him, right? So it's going to be an interesting parallel that as we go through it, I'll mention little highlight, comparisons, but it's very interesting to compare the two. Sorry, hold on one second. Is there any connection between what Shaul did? Yes, most definitely. When we get to Uriah and David, please God, if we get to Shmuel, that and the story of David and Bathsheba with Uriah, it is definitely connected. Definitely, what goes around comes around in that sense. 100%, Susie. So hold that thought for a few weeks / probably a few months. But if we stay in it, we will definitely get there and talk about that. So it will definitely be what goes around comes around. So Michal loves David. It's told to Shaul, this is good in his eyes. Pasuk Aleph, Vayomer Shaul etnena lo utihilo lemokesh. Vatihibo yad plishtim, right? So Shaul's like, great, no problem. This will be like my ploy for whatever, whatever, but he'll die, right? I can say he'll marry Michal, but like, he's not going to actually marry Michal because he's going to die by the hands of the Plishtim. I won't even look bad, right? Vayomer Shaul el David, and Shaul looks at David and he's, b'shtayim titchatein b'hayom. Look at the luck. I can have two daughters betrothed today, right? Okay, fine. So Rav married somebody else. She married Adriel. That's fine. But look at the luck. Both of you can get married, right? Michal and Mirav, and now I can betroth David to Michal, but it doesn't work right away. Pasuk Kafbet, Vayitzav Shaul et Abadav. Shaul turns to some of his servants and he says, okay, Debru el David balat lemor. I want you to secretly talk to David and say to him, Hinei chafetz b'cha hamelach. Right? The king loves you. V'kol avadav ahivucha. Everyone in the palace loves you. V'ata now hitchaten b'malach. Right? Magia lecha. Right? You have really risen up in the ranks and everybody loves you. You should really marry the princess. Right? He wants you to. He wants you to marry his daughter. Pasuk Gimel, right? But like, let it be a hush hush conversation. Let it be like hawk, right? So Pasuk Gimel, Vayidabru avdei Shaul ba'aznei David et hadvarim ha'ela, right? So these servants of Shaul, warm up to David and they tell him these things on the DL, right, on the down low, this private conversation. Vayomer David. David turns to them and he says, Anikala be'einechem le'traktim b'malach. Oh, do you think this is Kal, right? Do you think this is light? Do you think it's no big deal to marry into the kingdom, to marry the princess? Anochi ish rash, Nikla. I don't think you guys get it. I don't have money. I'm insignificant, right? I can't afford it. I can't afford a dowry for a princess. So don't make light of this. Don't joke around. This isn't hawk. This isn't a joke. And it's almost offensive to me. Right? So these little spies go back. Lonely more. And so the servants of Shaul go back to Shaul and they tell him, David. David's being sincere, but not because he's not interested, right? He thinks he's unworthy because he thinks he can't afford it, right? He alluded to this financial concept of rash, that he's poor, that he thinks that's part of the issue. So, Pasuk of Hey, Vayomer Shaul. Shaul says, okay, go back, bring more hawk, right? Ko tomru David. Next time, start up this conversation, but here's your response. Ein chafetz l'melech b'mohar. The king doesn't need more money. He's already uber wealthy, right? He's already super rich. What would the king really want? What would be a really awesome dowry? Ki b'me'ah arlot plishtim. You need to bring him 20 kilu and arlaz to do a brit milah, right? So meaning kill the plishtim and then to mock them, right? Do a brit milah on these dead plishtim, and you'll bring them to the king, lihinakim bo'evei hamelach, just as like nekama, just as vengeance, meaning we're not in the middle of a war. This is not part of a battle. This is almost like an initiator, right? Just to be nikum, right? Just to do revenge. The Shaul Hashav, right? Shaul came up with this plan. Why? Lahapil at David biad plishtim, right? What? Number one, what idiot, right? Would just walk into a Plishti city and kill 100 Plishtim for no reason, so to speak, right? Just as Nikama, understandably and expectedly, there would be a retaliation on him. And I'm not sending in the army, right? I'm not sending in thousands of troops. So meaning David would have to do this ki'ilu alone. Obviously, he would have son men with him, but there's no way that he would have the amount to outnumber the Plishtim in the scene. So to him, this is a suicide mission, right? Shaul comes up with this ridiculousness, assuming that if David buys into this, then Barur, he won't make it out alive, right? There's no way that he would survive this mission. Pasuk Chavav, Vayagidu Avadav LeDavid, right? The messengers have this PC conversation again with David. et hadvarim ha'ela, and they tell him these things. But this time, vayishar hadavar b'inei David lehitzkatein b'malach. David hears this, and he's like, "Oh, well, that I can do." Right? You're right. I don't think I could have afforded a dowry, but if you think he would appreciate 100 dead Plishtim more than money, and that would be worthy of marrying into the kingdom, that I can do. He doesn't even wait, right, for the assigned day, whatever that means, right? Whatever time slot was given for this. Vayakam David, Vayilechu va'anashav, right? He takes his unit, so to speak, his men. They get up and they go. Vayach ba'plishtim matayim ish. He doesn't just kill 100, he kills 200. Vayave David et arlotehem. And he brings the arlot plishtim to Shaul. Right? And there's no way out now, right? Now this is his dowry. He marries into the kingdom. Vayitain lo Shaul et Michal bito v'isha. And Shaul gives his daughter Michal to marry David. Right? And again, not going to spend time on it, but just to make sure we are connecting those intertextuality dots, right? What was the original offer that he had to make to marry Rachel? Yaakov, sorry, I shouldn't say he, right? Yaakov offered 7 years to marry Rachel, and which was a huge dowry in and of itself. But ultimately, how many years did he pay? Right, 7 times 2. He doubled it and paid 14. Right, and here, what was the offer? 100 zed plishtim, which is a huge dowry in and of itself. But ultimately, how much does David pay for Michal? Double, right? Again, the intertextuality, the comparison in the stories are wow. And until we get to like that main scene with the Trafim, where both will be like what really pulls them together. But so far, hopefully, you're seeing the common bonds that it continues. So he marries Michal, Pasuk Chavchat, Vayar Shaul, Vayeda, Ki Hashem in David. Right before he felt it, right? He was scared of Shaul, of David, because he felt that God was with David, but now first Shaul sees it, and we have crossed over to Yada. Now it is knowledge, right? There is no question that God is with David. There's no way he should have succeeded. There's no way he should have survived getting those 200 Zed Plishtim. Umichal bat Shaul ahivatu. But Michal, Shaul's daughter, loves him, right? It wants you to know in the same verse that it's letting you know that Shaul is feeling threatened by David. Michal was not in on this plan, right? This whole idea of Shaul to have him die and not end up marrying Michal, she had no clue. She didn't know anything about it. She loved David and was probably elated that he was able to come home and marry her. Pasuk Chavtat, Vayosef Shaul Leiro Mipnei David Od, right? And his fear of David increases. Vayihi Shaul Oyev et David Kol Hayamim, to the point that Shaul now sees David as an enemy, right? It's no longer, oh, I'm feeling threatened, I'm feeling insecure, right? His fears overtook him to a point that now David is an enemy. Pasuk Lamed, Vayetzu Sari Plishtim, Vayehi Midei Tzitam, Sachal David Mikol Avdei Shaul, right? David is the most successful. Every time they have any issue with Plishtim, David is the most successful. Vayikar Shemo Naod, right? Yakar is expensive, right? This idea that David's name becomes expensive. Now, this is the definition of a reputation, right? When someone's reputation precedes them, this is, to me, the Tanakh's way of saying that. David is known by all, and it's not just known, it's Yakar, right? His name, who he is now wow, right? But don't forget that Shaul is more and more threatened by the minute. So we continue in our story into Perek Yud Tet. Pasuk Aleph. Vayidaber Shaul el Yonatan beno ve'el kol avadav. right? So Shaul now calls in his inner circle of advisors, right? And who is in this inner circle of advisors? Yonatan, right? Shaul's son, the prince, which makes sense that he would be in the inner circle of his advisors. But what is this inner circle getting to hear? What does he want from them? Lahamit at David, right? This is a secret private mission just for his personal crew, so to speak, to kill David. Now, before we even finish the rest of the pasuk, why does this have to be in secret, right? Because how did Perek Yudchet end? With reminding us that everyone loves David, right? His name is Yakar. So there can't be an edict out, right? Shaul can't put a order out to have him killed. He can't have anyone know that he wants him killed. And therefore, it is literally this small inner circle of people he can trust. And he just gives them a mission without explanation. I want you to kill David. But then the text lets us know Yehonatan ben Shaul chafetz b'David ma'od. Right, even though Yonatan is ben Shaul, right, that's how it's referring to him in this pasuk. We know exactly who he is, but it reiterates he is ben Shaul. He loves David, right, and he really believes David is supposed to be the next king. So when he gets this tzivoy, when he gets this command, what does he do? Pasuk bet, vayagid Yonatan leDavid lemor. Right, Yonatan quickly goes and tells David and says, "Listen, my father just put out in this unit an order to kill you. And now, Hishamerna baboker, v'yashavta baseter v'nechbeta. You have to hide until tomorrow morning. Right? I'm going to take care of this. I'm going to deal with this. But I can't control the other people that heard this tzivoy, right? So until I can, I need you to hide until the morning. Pasuk Gimel, va'ani etzei va'amadati liyad avi basadeh asher ata sham, va'ani adaber b'cha el avi v'ra'iti ma v'higadatzi lach. Right? So he says, listen, I'm going to go talk to my father, but I'm dafka going to talk to him in the field that I know you're hiding in, right? So that you know that this is legit. I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to find out, right? I have to find out what's going on. And as soon as I know what's going on, I'll tell you. Meaning, Yonatan can't wrap his head around this at this point, right? He's like, I don't understand. But I couldn't question my father with other officers there, right? That's incredibly disrespectful. That's completely not okay. So I couldn't question him in that moment, but I need to talk to him, right? So you go hide. I'm going to talk to my dad, and I will update you as soon as I have information. Okay? Pasuk Daled, Vayidaber Yonatan b'David Tov El Shaul Aviv. Right? Yonatan goes to his father and he starts talking positively about David. Vayomer Elav. And he says to his father, Dad, Al Yachata HaMelech B'Avdo b'David. Right? The king should not make such a transgression, right? Such a mistake with his servant David. Hilochatalach. Right? The only reason we ever have a hit mission on an individual is because they were morid b'malchut, right? Because they rebelled against the kingdom in some way. But lo chatalach, right? David didn't do anything. Lahafach, right? The opposite. Ki ma'asav tov lecha ma'od. Everything David does for you is so good. Pasuk hey v'yasem et nafsho b'kapo. Literally, he puts his life into your hands. Vayachat haplishti, he killed Goliath, right? He keeps putting himself out there for you. Vayas Hashem teshuah gedolah lichol Yisrael, right? God made him win, right? Clearly, God wanted him to win, and he saved the entire nation. Ra'ita, right? Dad, you saw it with your own eyes. And when you saw it, vatitzmach, you were so happy. Right? Why would you make such a huge mistake, Dad? Right? Why would you spill innocent blood? I don't understand. Right? Now, I imagine, as detailed as these psukim are, I imagine he went even further. Right? I imagine this was a really big push and discussion until Pasuk Vav, Vayishma Shaul, V'kol Yonatan. Shaul listens to Yonatan. right? And to me, this pasuk is also so bittersweet because yes, it's comforting that he listens to Yonatan, but it reminds us there are moments of sanity for Shaul, right? There are moments that he can generally hear the truth and in his heart of hearts believe it and know that Yonatan is right, to the point Vayishava Shaul. Shaul swears to Yonatan and he says, Chai Hashem im yumat, right? I swear in the name of God I won't kill him, right? Meaning like, oh my God, you're right. You're right, Yonatan. What was I thinking? Wait, what was that? That was insane. What? You're right. I can't believe I ever said that. I'm so sorry. Right? I'm so sorry. What? You're right. Right? David's amazing. David's so good to me. David doesn't want to harm me. David's only helped me. You're right. I am so sorry. He will. No, he's not going to die. Pasuk Zion, right? Clearly, Yonatan believes his father. Vayikra Yonatan David. Yonatan quickly calls David. Vayagid lo Yonatan et kol dvarim ha'ila, and Yonatan tells him everything that happens. Vayavei Yonatan et David el Shaul. Right? And literally, this it goes to show Yonatan's, also his innocence and his naivete, but how much he believed his father. He brings David back to Shaul, and he's like, "Guys, make up." Right? Like we're family now. Like it's not even like you love him because he's a servant. He's your son-in-law. Like give him a hug. Hugs everybody, right? And literally, I imagine Yonatan feels so good about this reintroduction. I imagine David feels a sense of relief but confusion. And unclear how Shaul feels in that moment. I imagine good also because the pasuk says, "Vayihi lefanav ke'etzmol shalshom," and David was before him like the days of old, so to speak, right? Like yesterday and the day before, right? What we're going to see in Shaul is this emotional ruach ra, this psychological challenge, this mental illness, whatever we want to call it. It literally can wash over him in a wave, but he can get moments of clarity, right? And here he has a moment of clarity, right? I don't want to kill David. You're right. David is amazing. And therefore, there's a pause of just a harmony, so to speak. And this concept of David not being a threat, there are moments and sparks of clarity for Shaul, but it sadly doesn't always hold. We're actually going to pause here. I know it's only 53, but I feel like to start the next piece, I cannot do in 7 minutes. So we're going to pause here with this idea of it ending with David getting back into Shaul's good graces, that he is able to work for the king again and be in his presence, and Shaul not feeling threatened, but for us to know that it's a wave, that this Ruach Ra will come back. And the question is, each time when it's more overtaking, how far is Shaul going to go, right? We've gotten to the point that first he tried the darts, and then he tried to send him into war, and then he gives him this secret mission of, killing the 100 Plishtim, and ultimately gives his own people a secret mission to kill David. But what we'll see next week, Bezrat Hashem, is he's not even able to keep it secret anymore. Soon his hatred and his fear and his feeling threatened is going to be so overwhelming, he's going to have to go public with it. But hold on, there's a question. Oh, my pleasure. Perfect. So we will pick up with this Ezrat Hashem next Sunday. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you very much.